447. That's not a random number. It's the amount of real, up-to-date data we've analysed for this comparison. We've put Norway, Sweden and Finland under the microscope like never before, moving beyond opinions to rely solely on facts. These three countries are often presented as a single bloc, but the reality is they are profoundly different, and they offer a very different quality of life. We compared them across these 10 factors to answer one single question. Which of these three Nordic giants is truly the best? Welcome to Amazing Europe. Imagine a country with just 5 million people that, in a single year, earns a net of over $82 billion from the rest of the world after expenses and revenues. This is not a fantasy, it's Norway's balance sheet. That's our starting point to compare the economic engines of Norway, Sweden and Finland, and to answer three key questions. Who has the real firepower? Who has the healthiest finances? And who wins the macroeconomic battle? The first big difference is seen when looking at debt. While Sweden stands as an island of stability with a debt of 33.7% of GDP, and Norway stays solid at 42.7%, Finland is struggling under the heavy burden of 86.4%, a massive weight that limits its future capabilities. But it's purchasing power that reveals the true gap. Thanks to its oil industry, the average Norwegian enjoys a GDP per capita, adjusted for purchasing power, of nearly $108,000, a figure that dwarfs the already wealthy $75,000 of Sweden and $66,000 of Finland. The macroeconomic verdict is therefore harsh. Norway is an almost untouchable energy fortress. Certainly, the war in Ukraine has played in its favour, as the European Union now buys much of its oil and gas from this country instead of from Russia. And what about the other two Nordic countries? We could say that Sweden is a champion of fiscal stability, competitive, and with a diversified economy. Finland, on the other hand, is a courageous fighter, but with more fragile finances and the weakest economic engine of the group. But does this enormous national wealth really translate into a better life for the average citizen? Here's where we find a big surprise. At first glance, the answer seems obvious. With a net monthly salary of €3,500, Norway wins. But that's an illusion. The citizen who actually lives best in their own country and is able to save the most money is paradoxically the one with the lowest salary. The key metric is the real disposable income, adjusted for purchasing power. This tells us who has the most actual wealth after paying all expenses and receiving state benefits. And here, the result is shocking. Finland jumps to the top with $45,700, while Norway comes second. So it's the average Finn who, at the end of the month, has the greatest spending and saving power in daily life. Clearly, we're talking about well-being within one's own country. When it comes to travelling abroad, the higher nominal salary gives the Norwegian an overwhelming purchasing power. But the real ticking time bomb is debt. Norway's household debt stands at an unsustainable 210%. For every €100 earned net, a Norwegian owes 210 to the bank. It's a gilded cage built on a mortgage. Sweden's debt levels are also high, and what's more, Sweden is clearly the country with the most inequality between rich and poor. But it's Finland's debt, at 111%, that remains at a much healthier and more manageable level. The final verdict is turned upside down. Norway is a high-risk bet. Sweden is a precarious balance. Finland emerges as the unexpected champion of real financial security and well-being. But why are families, especially in Norway, so deeply in debt? The answer, at least in part, comes down to one word: real estate market. But why are families, especially in Norway and Sweden, drowning in debt? The answer is simple. Their housing market forces them to. In Stockholm and Oslo, buying a downtown apartment will cost you between €7,000 and €10,000 per square metre. Sky-high prices that create an invisible wall. But it's in the rental market that the true soul of these countries is revealed. In Norway, renting is a war, low supply, and prices that exploded by 5% in just one quarter. In Sweden, it's a bureaucratic nightmare. If you want a rent-controlled apartment, the waiting list in Stockholm is 20 years. This perverse system has created a black market of subleases, expensive and completely unprotected. And what about Finland? Here, the market has flipped. There's an excess supply that has driven prices down, giving more power to tenants. This is the root of the debt crisis. To escape the rental maze, people are forced to buy at any cost. The final result? An architecture of segregation. Especially in Sweden, those who can't afford city centre prices are pushed to outer ghettos, where poverty and social tensions concentrate. The verdict is clear. Norway is the market of speculation. Sweden is the champion of inequality and frustration. Finland, thanks to strong state intervention to control prices and prevent ghettos, clearly wins the challenge of housing sustainability. This social fracture, created by the housing market, is the fertile ground for another major crisis, the migration crisis. For decades, 3 neighbouring countries have conducted 3 completely different social experiments. And now, it's truly fascinating to see the results. Sweden declared itself a humanitarian superpower, opening its doors wide. Today, more than a quarter of its population is of foreign origin. Norway followed a more pragmatic path, driven mainly by a need for labour. Finland, historically more closed, stayed behind, with only 8% of its population being of foreign origin. Economically, various political parties argue that all 3 countries need immigration to help pay future pensions. But the success of this gamble depends on labour integration. And here, the Swedish experiment has produced alarming results. The employment gap between natives and immigrants is the largest in Europe, creating a heavy burden on the welfare system. This is where Sweden's social mosaic began to crack. The combination of failed housing policies and high immigration has led to deep segregation. In the suburbs of major cities, parallel societies have emerged, vulnerable areas with extreme unemployment and social tensions. It's a problem that Finland, having learned from Sweden's outcome, is trying to prevent with targeted social housing policies aimed at stopping the formation of ghettos. This social upheaval has triggered a political earthquake. In all 3 countries, nationalist and conservative parties have become major players. In Sweden, the Sweden Democrats, once on the fringe, are now the 2nd largest party and set the government agenda. In Finland, the Finns Party is a key partner in the governing coalition. And in Norway, the Progress Party has shaped the national debate for decades. The result? A total convergence. Today, all 3 countries, driven by these new political forces, are abandoning their former models to adopt increasingly restrictive immigration policies. But to find out who really wins on the topic of immigration, we need to look at one more thing: crime. Crime is the chapter that more than any other marks a deep and irreparable fracture among the Nordic countries. And we're not just talking about perception, we're talking about numbers. When we look at the most extreme form of violence, homicide, Norway stands out as an almost untouchable fortress, with an average over the last 5 years of just 0.53 cases per 100,000 inhabitants. Sweden follows with 1.11, while Finland reports the highest rate, 1.45, a number linked more to interpersonal violence than to gang wars. But the homicide rate doesn't tell the whole story. The real Swedish crisis emerges through other numbers. Its rape rate is twice as high as that of Norway and Finland, which are nearly identical. And most of all, Sweden is the only country facing an epidemic of gun violence, with hundreds of shootings each year. Just take 2023. Sweden recorded 363 shootings resulting in 53 deaths. This violence is deeply tied to the crisis of its so-called vulnerable areas. Official Swedish data shows that for crimes like robbery, almost 60% of suspects are Swedes with both parents born abroad. When it comes to deadly violence, that figure is 58%. We're talking about people born in Sweden to foreign parents, clear evidence of complete integration failure. Now, it's important to say that the vast majority of immigrants and their children have no connection to crime. They are honest people, fully integrated into society. However, looking at official data, it is undeniable that there is a link between immigration and crime. These are numbers that reflect a deep social fracture, with gangs openly challenging the state, a phenomenon that simply does not exist in neighbouring countries. When it comes to crimes like theft and robbery, Sweden is clearly the worst in the group. Finland is much safer, but Norway does even better, confirming itself as an oasis of security. The final verdict is clear. Sweden is, without a doubt, the definite loser. It is facing a crisis of systemic violence and breakdown of order that its neighbours do not know. Finland is significantly safer, but it is Norway that emerges as the unquestioned winner. Not only does it have the lowest homicide rate, it also excels in everyday security, with fewer thefts and robberies. If a nation's wealth were measured in years of life, Norway and Sweden would be nearly identical, with a life expectancy that exceeds 83 years, beating Finland. But the real question is, how many of those years are lived in good health? Here, the first major difference emerges. While Norwegians and Finns begin to experience significant illness around the age of 70, the average Swede reaches this threshold about 2 years later, at 72. The toughest battle for health is fought on the front line of the heart. Cardiovascular diseases are the leading cause of death in all 3 countries, but Finland suffers disproportionately, with a mortality rate from ischemic heart disease nearly twice as high as its neighbours. This is worsened by a more sedentary lifestyle. Almost 1/3 of Finns engage in no physical activity at all. All 3 countries offer universal healthcare systems of extremely high quality, with cancer survival rates among the best in the world. But this right clashes with a major shared problem: waiting lists. It is Sweden, in particular, that suffers the most severe delays in accessing non-urgent care. The final verdict is complex. Finland is the loser in this comparison, held back by weaker cardiovascular health. The victory is a tie between the other 2. Norway wins on the effectiveness of its system in fighting the deadliest diseases. But it is Sweden that earns the title of overall health winner, giving its citizens a precious gift: more years of life in good shape. But everything changes dramatically when we consider mental health. Welcome to the Nordic paradox. The UN crowns Finland as the happiest country in the world, and the other Nordic nations are also at the top of the list. But the data tells a different story, one of deep psychological suffering. In Sweden, 41% of young people are at risk of depression, nearly 3 times the European average. In Norway, a staggering 22% of the population feels lonely. These are not just numbers, they are the symptom of a structural distress. The Nordic countries dominate the rankings for antidepressant consumption. Sweden records 118 daily doses per 1,000 inhabitants, a figure that has more than doubled in the past 20 years. Finland follows closely, with a 130% surge over the same period. The cause? An epidemic of loneliness, fueled by a hyper-individualistic society where nearly half the population lives alone. This loneliness often ends in tragedy. Finland, the happiest nation, according to the UN, has one of the highest suicide rates in Europe, nearly 16 cases per 100,000 people, double that of southern European countries like Italy. Sweden and Norway follow with similarly alarming numbers. The verdict is a bitter realization. There is no true winner in this category. Finland, with its record-high suicide rates, and Sweden, with its devastating youth mental health crisis, are the losers in this comparison. Norway emerges as the relative winner, almost by default. Though suffering from the same ills, it shows the lowest suicide rates and antidepressant use of the group. A small consolation in a picture that challenges the very definition of happiness. But what if we looked not at the health of the people, but at the health of the nation itself? There is a ticking time bomb beneath the foundations of the Nordic model, and its name is demography. All 3 countries face the same double crisis: an exodus of young people from rural areas to the capitals, and an unstoppable ageing of the population. The fracture is visible. More than 85% of the population now lives in urban areas, creating unsustainable pressure on cities like Oslo and Stockholm, while vast rural regions are being emptied out. The greatest challenge is ageing. Finland is in the most critical situation. With 23.4% of its citizens over 65, it is one of the oldest nations in Europe. Sweden follows with 20.9%, while Norway is the youngest with 19.1%. This means fewer and fewer workers to pay for more and more pensions. Worsening the picture is a collapse in birth rates. Finland has hit a historic low, with a birth rate now below the death rate. Eurostat data paints a shocking future. Without new arrivals, over the next 50 years, the native Finnish population, excluding immigrants, will shrink by 17%. Even Sweden and Norway, despite slightly better fertility rates, would face declines of 10% and 6% respectively. In the face of this demographic collapse, many politicians and economists suggest a solution: a massive increase in immigration to support the workforce. But is this really the answer? Or is the social cost, as we have seen, simply too high? Let us know what you think in the comments. The verdict, however, is clear. Norway, younger, wealthier, and with the most contained population decline, is the most resilient. Sweden is under heavy pressure, but Finland, with the oldest population, the worst birth collapse, and the most dramatic depopulation forecast, is undoubtedly the loser in this silent yet deadly race. In the labyrinth of Nordic work, opportunities may seem endless, but the obstacles are often invisible. To understand which country offers the best job market, it is not enough to look at the surface. The first number that jumps out is the unemployment rate. Norway shines with a solid 3.9%, while Sweden and Finland struggle with nearly double that rate, around 7.5%. But the real drama is hidden in the fine print. In Sweden, youth unemployment exceeds a startling 22%. It is the symptom of a system that, despite having a dynamic economy, leaves an entire generation on the sidelines. For a qualified foreigner, the wall is even higher. Sweden has the largest employment gap in Europe between natives and immigrants, while Finland presents the insurmountable barrier of its language, unique and complex. And if you manage to overcome these barriers and get a job, welcome to the Nordic paradox of work-life balance. On paper, the conditions are perfect. Shorter hours, long vacations. In reality, the pressure to perform is crushing. Sweden is the epicenter of a true burnout crisis, with stress becoming the leading cause of long-term sick leave. So who wins the work challenge? First, let us be clear. All three of these nations offer working conditions that are among the best in Europe. But if we are to compare them to one another, the verdict, based on data, is clear. Finland faces the greatest challenge, struggling with high unemployment and a language barrier. Sweden, while offering opportunities, turns out to be a ruthless system for young people and foreigners. It is Norway that emerges as the undisputed winner of this challenge. It offers not only the healthiest job market with the lowest unemployment, but also a system that, while demanding, appears less broken and more accessible than that of its neighbours. The Nordic countries may appear as a single bloc, but their strategic choices reveal three very different ways of being in the world. Finland has chosen full integration. It is in the European Union and uses the euro, a move that guarantees economic protection and a seat at the table in Brussels. In return, however, its hands are tied. During a crisis, it cannot devalue its currency to make its products cheaper and kickstart the economy. And this has already happened. According to Nobel Prize winner Paul Krugman, the euro was the main reason the economic crisis in Finland dragged on for years. Not because the euro caused the crisis, but because it prevented the Finns from responding with effective measures. Sweden, on the other hand, made a different bet. Inside the EU, but outside the euro. It has kept its currency, the krona, which acts as a shock absorber. If the global economy declines, the krona weakens, Swedish exports become more competitive, and the system recovers faster. The price to pay, however, is a weaker currency, which makes travel and imports more expensive for its citizens. And Norway? It is out of everything. Thanks to its oil, it is wealthy enough not to ask permission from anyone. But that freedom is only apparent. To sell its products in Europe, it is forced to accept almost all EU laws without being able to vote on them. In all three countries, political stability has been undermined from within. The era of consensus politics is over. That old system where left and right, though rivals, would still collaborate on major issues. Today, the landscape is fragmented, with nationalist parties becoming key players in Finland and Sweden. And the war in Ukraine triggered the latest historic shift. the entry of Sweden and Finland into NATO. So, what is the winning strategy? Finland's full integration, Sweden's middle way, or Norway's conditional independence? Let us know what you think in the comments. So, at the end of our analysis, who's the winner? Before we reveal the final verdict, if you found this video informative, we kindly ask you to support our project by giving it a like, subscribing to the channel, and clicking the bell so you don't miss our upcoming videos. And don't forget about our new channel, America vs. Europe, where we compare all European countries, the United States and Canada, across a wide range of topics. So, which of the three is the best country? If we were to choose the winner by assigning 1 point for each factor considered in this video, the winner would be Norway, while Sweden would come in third place. But we know that judging the best country this way would be wrong. Each of us has our own priorities. Some people look for a safe country with low crime. Others dream of a place where finding housing is easy. For some, wealth is the most important factor. For others, it's health. And of course, we couldn't take into account everything, like the beauty and accessibility of nature, the school system, technological innovation, and much more. That's why we are truly interested in your opinion. Which one do you think is the best country among Norway, Sweden, and Finland? Write it in the comments. And if you're interested in comparisons between countries, you absolutely shouldn't miss this video, where we compare the United Kingdom and Germany to find out which one is more dangerous. That's it for this video. See you next time.